concentrer sur ce qui est constructif. Abandonner nos erreurs et nos échecs. Puisque nous ne pouvons pas changer le passé, nous devons plutôt lui demander de nous aider à changer la perception que nous en avons. En lui, nous trouverons notre salut.
Ellie Foumbi, thank you so much for talking with me today here on Underexposed. I am so excited about Our Father the Devil. We've chatted about it a little bit. I want to just say this movie came across my radar a couple years ago. We were in the same film festival, the Toronto International Film Festival, and I was looking for filmmakers to hang out with. I saw the log line for this movie, and it just like jumped out of the program at me, and I'm like, I gotta see this. Sadly, we weren't there for long enough to see the film, but
Oh,
I was able to finally see it at the Quad here in New York last summer, I guess it was that it came out, right? And it was
yeah.
just like I was blown away. It was like my favorite thriller I've seen in so many years. It's the type of
Oh.
thriller that I love that I don't see that much anymore. We'll get into the influences of it, but for those who haven't seen the movie, Ellie, could you please let us know like how do you talk about Our Father the Devil? How do you pitch it?
Um, I think I think of it as a psychological thriller. There's been different things put out there. Everyone can see it how they want, but I think it's a slow burning thriller about this African immigrant who is living in the south of France in a very small town, who's obviously dealing with some sort of post-traumatic stress, but no one really knows. She's sort of suffering in silence. And then this priest arrives and begins to volunteer at the retirement home where she works. And this completely unravels her in ways that become apparent over the course of the film. I don't want to give it away, but basically, she recognizes this man as someone from her past who has done horrific things. And it's 20 years later, and she has to really determine whether it really is him, and what she's going to do about it. So it is a revenge thriller, in my opinion. But it's much more than that. I feel like the film touches on themes of redemption and just like who deserves to be forgiven. And those are things that I think are really pertinent today, especially in like our cancel culture and also when we're looking at just on a more general level, like when we're looking at the penal system and the justice system in this country, the way everyone's not judged the same way. So I feel like it opened up all of these conversations for me.
Certainly did for me. And it,
Mm.
yeah, like I just love the film for all the ways that it defies categorization, that kind of easy categorization. But yeah, in its DNA, it feels like a thriller of the tradition of like a Michael Haneke kind of film. Of course, it's completely its own thing. But what are some of the other influences that you were thinking about when you were developing this?
Haneke was a big one. Hitchcock has always been sort of the master, the godfather of thrillers.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think my style is much closer to Haneke than Hitchcock's, but just in terms of, you know, how you build tension and sort of drawing the audience in. There's Kiyoshi Kurosawa who did Cure. That was a big influence for me and
Mm-hmm.
my DP when we were thinking about the visual language of the movie. A lot of even like Bong Joon-ho to a certain extent, like Parasite was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And even pre-Parasite, like I love Memories of a Murder and like yeah, I would say those filmmakers were big influences. I I'm always trying to find a way to sort of like push the genre in a direction that feels unexpected. And so part of borrowing from some of these filmmakers was, I mean, for me, it's always like, how do you make it your own as a filmmaker? How do you take the thing that you're inspired by and find a way to twist it just a little bit so that it's like, it has your own signature on it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I tried to do with Our Father.
Yeah, I mean, there's moments where it kind of nods to like Shadow of a Doubt, I want to
Oh,
say, but then
100%.
the wonderful thing about it is it's so gleefully destabilizing, the movie, where it's like you think you're in shadow of a doubt, and then it's like, wait a minute, like who's the Uncle Charlie in this situation, really? Like it's really, really
Yeah.
stunning. And I love that experience to not fully understand your protagonist, to be rooting for your protagonist, but then have your your relationship with them evolve and take a step forward and then take a step back, and really not be sure what fully motivates them until, in this case of this movie, which I won't go into too much detail, but the climax is incredible. Like it's so rare in a film to still be learning about your protagonist by the time you reach the climax, particularly in like a revenge story. It's a testament also to the performances, which I want to segue to now. It's a movie, it's very much a two-hander between these two incredible actors. Tell me about finding them and building those performances.
I feel so lucky to have found these actors. So Suleiman Sisavane, who plays Father Patrick, he and I met 8, 9 years ago at this point. Like we were actually cast in a short together. And I remember him from his work in Goodbye Solo, Ramin Barani's film. But I was just surprised, to be cast with him in this piece, and also was like, what are you up to? What's happening? And I was really surprised that like he wasn't that busy, because I felt like he had something really special, like so charismatic as a performer. But it also made me aware of how difficult it is for performers of color, particularly immigrants, when you have an accent and you sound a certain way, it's not so easy to find your space within this industry. He ended up being typecast a lot. So I was very inspired to like develop something for him. And it's a big part of like why I even started developing this feature, was like really thinking of him in mind. And Babatita Sajo, who plays Marie, our lead actress, who's absolutely incredible, is where we have a mutual friend who's also an actor. And I saw her in the trailer of a movie, and I just thought she was incredible. Like she has this face where it's so transparent. Like she doesn't need to do anything. And I knew from the moment I saw her face that she was my Marie. I wrote that role for her. And I was just very fortunate that the people that I had in mind as I was writing the script are the people who ended up saying yes and coming on board and, developing the characters with me. And they added so much to the tapestry of their characters and also to the world. There were so many ideas that Babatita brought to me that ended up going into the script. And I always give both her and the other actors that I worked with credit, because there are things you just can't come up with on your own,
What's an example of that? What's an example of something that Babatita
one
brought?
really great example of that is the lipstick.
Mm.
So for those who haven't seen the film, this won't make sense to you, but for those who have, so Marie's character has that dark lipstick that she wears basically for most of the movie. And then there's one scene in particular when she decides to change it for a very specific reason. And it was her idea to sort of like, this is how we show visually the shift, the internal shift within her character. And I just thought it was so smart and so brilliant and so cinematic as well. It's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
I mean, there's so many details that make this movie special. Just that first shot is just, I knew I was in good hands. Reminded me, I don't even know if you've seen the movie, but there's the first shot of the ceremony, the Chabrol movie.
Yeah.
It's through a window of a restaurant, and you're outside with the character, and then you pull back and you reveal the reflection of another character. And then you come into like a 2-shot there. But your shot is like that, but it also improves on it and just kind of sets the table for the movie in an incredible way. And then you cut to a shot where you see the baguette and the wine sneaking out of, that was like, okay, I love this movie already. It's one of the most visually assured movies I've seen in a long time. Can you talk about how you developed the shot list for this, or the visual style?
Credit to my DP, Tinks Chan, who is incredible. He's been a wonderful collaborator. I think, on such a small budget, like it's always about how do you get everything on screen? How do you not make it feel like it's a tiny film, but also even beyond budget? I really come from the school of like how, you know, openings are so important because this is how you draw your audience into the film. And so I studied under Annette Insdorf, whose philosophy is very much in line with like the first opening shot sort of sets up the film. It sets up the themes of the film. And so in thinking of it that way, the conversations my DP and I were having were, you know, what is this film about? Like, how do we introduce this character? What are we revealing to audiences about her? What are we holding? What are we keeping? You know, what are we not withholding from the audience? And just in thinking about her character, someone who's basically been hiding from everyone for her entire life, who has this huge secret, and in some ways has a double life, I would say. And so that's kind of where the reflection came in, and sort of like not showing her directly, but showing this other side of her and introducing the mystery of the character that the audience will unravel for the rest of the film. So that's kind of how we came up with the idea of this reflection and sort of withholding her face for as long as we do until we finally cut to it. And then similarly, you know, Father Patrick, his introduction's a little bit different, but we also withhold because we saw them as like sort of flip sides of the same coin. They're both, you know, leading double lives. They're both carrying this massive secret. And also they're ironically like they're the closest to each other because they have the shared history, the shared past. And they're the only ones who really understand what it's like to walk in each other's shoes. So that was our way of like visually connecting them and also introducing the themes of the film.
Yeah. You know, just back to the casting real quick. You know, Soulmain, and his performance in Goodbye Solo is just so sweet from what I remember. It's just like, and it's just a testament to you. I think the best casting decisions are that it's kind of instinctive decisions that you make. Good casting is like where you cast someone where you've seen them do it before. And great casting is when you see the potential of an actor to do something that they've never done before, and somehow you know it's there. And you've proven that with both of these roles in an incredible way.
It requires so much trust because I know I'm also asking them to do something that's incredibly difficult, that they have to push themselves past a point that maybe they haven't been pushed before. And it is so incredible to see them rise to that challenge. When I wrote these characters, I was like, I wrote it for them, but I was like, I don't know how they're gonna interpret these roles. Like, I didn't envy them at all, but kudos to them. They really, I think, embrace the challenge. And I think it just speaks to how often actors are left out of the conversation because they're never really given the opportunity to show what they can do, but also given the trust to take that leap of faith. So just wanted to say that.
That's a common theme here in the conversations I've had so far for this Substack. I mean, it's come up, and I've noticed I'm gravitating toward directors who have studied acting themselves and do have that preference. You've studied acting, you've been an actor, haven't you? So how does that contribute to your ability to direct?
Oh, so much. Because I know what I want from a director when I'm working. I know that I want the trust to be able to bring my own ideas to the character. I want to be able to fill in the gaps. I want the director to allow me to take that leap of faith. And also, as a director, you know, you don't know everything. You know, even though I wrote the script, I feel like there is a moment that comes when the actors know the characters better than you. And you have to listen to their instincts. I mean, you're there really to guide the ship, but you're not there to micromanage or to, you know, to steer every single second. I think there's an incredible amount of surprises that happen. I know that even if you see a scene in your head in a specific way, when it comes to life before you, it's never exactly how you planned it. You can't possibly plan it that way. If the actors are in the moment, if they're listening to each other, if they're, you know, just being inspired in the moment, it's always going to happen a little bit differently. And for me, that was part of the excitement of having a front seat to what these incredible artists were doing. It was like every time I was like, I don't know how this scene is gonna unfold. I know how it's written, but like there were always surprises, and there were things that they did that just like would shock us. To this day, I watch this movie and I'm like, I feel like I didn't write it. I feel like it just took on its own life, which is, I think, for me, like it's such a gift. Like that lets me know I did something right, that like it somehow just got away from me, and became its own thing.
That is the best feeling. And that's what I
Yeah.
think a lot of people who haven't directed much, they have all this anxiety, this control anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I talk to my students about this a lot. Like it's kind of like surfing in a way. It's like you
Yeah.
can show up, you've got your board, but you're not controlling the waves. You just have to
No,
ride what you get.
that's right. Go. It's okay to embrace the fact that you're not in control. That's what you want. Like the elements
Mhm.
come together, and then you're really truly creating magic. You're not just like, I think if you're trying to control every single element of every single thing, you're gonna end up with something that feels very stifled, that doesn't feel very alive.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the beautiful things about theater, is that the actors are up there every night. They're really living moment to moment, and every night performances are different based on however they're feeling that night, based on what kind of audience they have. There's like this, give and take between the audience and the performer on stage that I try to mimic as much as possible in film. It's obviously never going to be the same because we are setting marks and we're not always starting at the beginning. So like actors have to work quite differently in film, but as much as I can sort of get out of the way and allow them an uninterrupted process of being able to just really be in the moment when they're performing a scene, I feel like that's what I'm trying to do when I'm setting up even the shot list, when I'm setting up the order of what we're shooting. It's really to try and serve their performance.
Yeah, well, it really shows. I mean, these performances, as anybody can attest who's seen this movie, are absolutely next level incredible. And speaking of next things, what can you tell us about what you've been working on since and what you might have coming up?
I can't say that much. It's all kind of in the works, but I've got one sci-fi horror which I'm really excited about. It's an adaptation of a short story that a best-selling author brought to me. It's really special. It's again in the world of a performer, but it's a very different. I mean, I think a lot of people picked up on like my love of horror, even just in the way that I shot Our Father. There's a lot of horror language in the way that it's set up. So I do love horror. But that's one of the projects I have that is going. And then I have a thriller about the end of a 40-year marriage. That is a little bit more in line with Our Father, that is set between New York and Paris. And again, is a very kind of unconventional, slow burning thriller that really explores the end of this marriage. And those are my two projects right now that are sort of I'm developing concurrently.
That's so exciting. Well, I hope
Very.
we get to see those soon.
Yeah.
Since you started the process of making this film, like how do you think it's changed you?
Well, I mean, this is a film. It's funny because I remember one of the early screenings we had, um, people would come up to me and ask me like, just, am I a survivor of sexual assault? Or like, how did I get this right? Like, how did I find these details? And I was like, no, but I did so much research, and I really did. I went into writing this with a lot of sensitivity and really wanting to try to accurately depict what it is to like to live with this kind of a thing. There's also been a lot of people who have come up to me and have revealed like their own traumas and stuff. And I think it's shown me the power of cinema and just the power of art, and how it does bring us together, and how, I mean, my goal in making this film was to open up conversations about some of these uncomfortable topics. It's ultimately a film about about a child soldier, but it's not it's not just that. There's all these other like sub themes that the film explores because of our main character who was, who's a survivor of sexual assault. And I feel like, yeah, I realized how once you make something, it just doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the audience. And I think I was able to, I made the film I wanted to make, but I'm so open to how other people see it and what people take away from it. I don't feel like I have any ownership of that. And I never would have thought that early on. Like, I mean, it is my first feature, so it's my first time, making a film and having, such a showing it in so many places and in front of so many different audiences. But it also kind of showed me that I want to continue to make cinema that moves people, that opens up conversations, that pushes people outside of their comfort zones. I know this film made a lot of people very uncomfortable, but that's the point. I think that's what art is supposed to do. It's supposed to challenge audiences, and not everyone's gonna get it, not everyone's gonna like it, and that's okay. Like, you can't make something for everyone, you know, in my opinion.
Yeah. But this is
Yeah.
exactly what I think we need. I think there's been too much safetyism
Yes.
and that we've lost a bit of the sharpness of our teeth as artists and filmmakers in the past 20 years or
Yeah.
whatever.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's not like we need to be like shocked or something. There's plenty of things that are shocking in a kind of gratuitous way, but it's more about confronting uncomfortable questions,
Totally.
and that's what I'm all about. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, and some people don't necessarily want that. Like, some people want to go
yeah,
to the theater and they want to just like, they want to be distracted from their lives. They don't want to think about anything that is deep or uncomfortable, but, and that's fine. You can go
hmm
and watch a Marvel movie and lose yourself in that. There's no judgment. Like, but I think more often than not, this is why I think genre is so great, because I feel like it allows people, it gives people sort of that entertaining aspect that they're looking for, but it allows them to think about important themes or subjects without feeling like, it's this like bitter pill that they have to swallow as they're watching it. So hopefully,
yeah.
that's how people feel when they're watching my movie. But
I
um,
think I think it is. If there are plenty of movies that are trying to like, you're never at any point like rubbing our noses in it or
yeah,
whatever. It's never like that, and we've all had experiences like that where it's like, oh, that was really punishing in some way, and
yeah,
that's not at all the
no,
situation with this film.
hopefully not.
Um, I not no, not in my experience anyway. I thought it was just riveting, and
Mm.
yeah, like what else I want to ask you about? Okay, oh, it's in French. We should talk about that. Like,
Yes,
tell me about.
because sometimes people don't realize that they're going in to watch a like. Yes, it is in French. Like, they're like, oh, you know. I wrote about Francophone Africans. I'm from Cameroon originally. It's my first language. I think this was my way to sort of pay homage to my heritage, but also, you know, in thinking about this story, just like in a more plausible way, like this priest who sort of arrives out of nowhere. I actually, the first version of it, I wrote and I tried to set it in the States, and it was so distracting. People kept asking, like, how does he get here? Like, how does he go through and I was like, this is super distracting. Like, I don't want the logics of the like the story to sort of get in the way of people just like buying into what I'm setting up. And in so in France, because there's a decline of people going into the priesthood, often they're looking to priests in Africa. There's like they're bringing over a lot of priests from Africa. In fact, in the town where we shot, there was an African priest who had gone missing. That was kind of freaky when we were,
Hmm,
that was insane. It was almost like a sign from God that like we were in
yeah.
the right place. There was an African priest who had arrived in that town. I don't know how long he was there, but he had gone missing as well. So when we started scouting there, everyone thought we were making a film about him. And I was
Hmm.
like, no, not that priest. We're talking about another priest. So it's just much more plausible with the way that things work there, this guy would just arrive from
Yeah.
Africa and start working in this town. Um, and so for those reasons, I feel like when I changed the location, everything just made sense. Everything in the story just seemed to flow. And that's kind of how I knew, okay, this is where it's meant to be set. And then obviously once I changed the location, I had to change the language. It would have been very awkward to make an English language movie in the south of France and have these like two Francophone Africans speaking English. So I just sort of went with what was in front of me, you know.
And I'm so glad that you did. That would have
Thank
been,
you. I appreciate
yeah,
that.
that wouldn't have been as successful, I don't think. It's just wonderful
Yeah.
to, yeah.
It would have been awkward for sure.
Yeah. I saw a film that will remain unnamed 2 days ago in which it was set in Brazil, but like they were
Mm.
speaking this kind of Spanishy English the whole time, everybody. And it was
Oh
like,
no.
oh, it was not a good situation. So I also want to ask you, see, let me think.
Mm.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Religion, of course. Like you have this film centers on a priest. Like
Yeah,
what do you think that's all about?
that's a very interesting question. I feel like I'm trying to unpack it.
Mm,
I have my faith is really strong. But I don't consider myself to be like religious, and I don't think it's a conscious choice for me to, but it is something that reoccurs in my work. I have two other pieces that are indirectly sort of involving faith or religion in some kind of way. I think there's something about it. I don't know, like I do think I'm drawn to like sort of characters that are morally ambiguous. I feel like we all are at different levels or times in our lives. Like we're all always struggling between like that the angel and the demon on our shoulders. And there's something really interesting about that, like just exploring this like moral gray zone that we all live in. And it's so much starker in when you put it against a religious context. And for me, like when I was thinking a lot about what Father Patrick should do as a job, I love the idea that he was sort of hiding in the priesthood because it's opening up all these questions about like, well, is he really changed or is he just hiding, you know?
yeah.
And I liked the sort of all the questions that that opened up, and not just for him, but also for her in terms of
Hmm.
someone who is completely, you know, lost faith and all of that stuff. And I don't know, it served the story really well, but it also served, I think, the themes that I'm interested in, which are like, well, particularly for this film, it's forgiveness, it's redemption, it's like who deserves to be forgiven? Are there ever crimes that are unforgivable? Like these are questions I was asking myself as I was developing the film, and not answering them at all. It's like up to you. Some people are like, watch the film and, you know, still feel like, no, no one should like, you know, there are crimes that are unforgivable, but yeah, I think I'm often just fueled by the questions, and then wherever they lead me is sort of like the direction I try to go down, and somehow religion just keeps coming back up. Maybe one day I will finally unpack that and figure out why that is, but as of now, I really don't know.
Fair enough. And fueled
Yeah.
by the questions is such a great way of putting it. I think that's
Mm.
just the best place to operate from as a storyteller and an artist. Ellie, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This is
Of
really
course.
wonderful, and for
Yeah.
highlighting our father. It's really nice to still have like interest or to still even be able to talk about it after the film's out now. And it's on the Criterion channel, for
Thank
people who
you.
are interested in seeing it.
Absolutely. You guys have to check it out. It's amazing. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.